Welcome. In this video, we will demonstrate the complete rebuild of Viking Pump's GB-425 series. This video will cover these pump models. Before you begin, please consult the appropriate technical service manual for safety information. A copy of the latest revision can be found on our website at vikingpump.com. To begin, make sure the pump is completely secured by bolting to the table or workbench. Loosen and remove the cap screws on the head end of the pump. Discard the cap screws. Remove the head mounting foot. Next, remove the head. A pry bar may be required. Be careful not to damage the face of this component. Set the pump head aside for reassembly. You may then remove and discard the bushing block and gasket and the head O-ring. Remove and discard both the driven gear, driven shaft, and driver gear, as well as the drive pin. Remove and discard the alignment pins, the casing, and casing O-ring. Next, remove the separation plate. Discard the two bushing blocks and gaskets and the O-ring. Retain the separation plate and the spacer for reassembly. Remove and discard the next driven gear, driven shaft, driver gear, and drive pin. Remove and discard the next alignment pins, casing, and O-ring. Loosen and remove the cap screws on the bracket end of the pump. Discard these cap screws. Next, bend up the tang on the lock washer. Insert a brass bar or piece of hardwood through the port and between the gears to prevent the shaft from turning. Loosen and remove the lock nut and washer. Remove the brass bar. Next, remove the ported separation plate. Discard the two bushing blocks and gaskets and the O-ring. Retain the ported separation plate and the spacer for reassembly. Remove and discard the next driven gear, driven shaft, driver gear, and drive pin. Remove and discard the next alignment pins, casing, and O-ring. Remove and discard the final bushing block and gasket. For seal removal, first loosen and discard the bearing end cap screws. Retain the bearing end cap for reassembly. Remove and discard the bearing spacer. Loosen and remove the seal holder cap screws. If necessary, use two of the cap screws as jack bolts to slowly press out the seal holder. Use the tapped holes at the 9 and 3 o'clock positions. Remove and discard the seal holder O-ring and the stationary seal seat. Retain the seal holder for reassembly. You can now remove the rotary seal components. Break the grip of the bellows seal by using a pair of picks. Remove and discard the seal components. Remove and discard the snap ring. You may now discard the drive shaft. Prior to reassembly, ensure the pump head, separation plate, ported separation plate, bracket, and spacers are clean and free of debris. It is recommended to complete all sub-assemblies before starting to rebuild the pump to ensure all components are in place. Begin by applying O-ring grease to the bushing block gaskets and inserting them into the grooves of the bushing blocks with the protrusions down to aid with adhesion. Do this for all bushing blocks and gaskets. Next, apply O-ring grease to the O-rings and insert into the grooves on each pump casing section, on each separation plate, and the pump head. Install each driven gear and drive pin onto their corresponding driven shaft and insert an external retaining ring on each side in the grooves. Each gear set needs to remain with their corresponding serialized casing. The serial numbers can be found on each gear and the casing. Finally, apply anti-seize to the head and bracket cap screws as well as the seal holder and bearing end cap screws. You can now begin rebuilding the pump. Apply light oil to the bushing block and bracket bores. When installing, make sure to line up the bushing block pin with the groove in the bracket. It may be necessary to use a soft-headed hammer to gently tap the bushing block into place. Be careful not to damage the faces of the bushing block. Install the shaft into the bracket. Install the alignment pins and casing. Install the drive pin and coat the driver shaft with light oil. Install the driver gear. Apply light oil to the driven gear and driven shaft assembly and install. Next, coat the spacer, ported separation plate, bushing block, and bores with light oil. When installing the spacer, ensure that the groove lines up with the pin at the bottom of the ported separation plate bore. When installing each bushing block, ensure that the pin lines up with the corresponding grooves in the spacer. Install the ported separation plate onto the shaft. Install and tighten the bracket cap screws. These will be torqued to their specified setting toward the end of the installation. Install the next pair of alignment pins and casing. Next, install the drive pin and coat the shaft and driver gear in light oil. Install the driver gear. Coat the driven gear and shaft with light oil and install. Next, coat the spacer, separation plate, bushing blocks, and bores with light oil. When installing the spacer, ensure that the groove lines up with the pin at the bottom of the separation plate bore. Install the spacer. When installing each bushing block, ensure that the pin lines up with the corresponding grooves on the spacer. Install the separation plate. Install the final pair of alignment pins and casing. Ensure that the O-ring is in place. Next, install the drive pin and coat the shaft and driver gear in light oil. Install the driver gear. Coat the driven gear and shaft with light oil and install. Coat the pump head bores and bushing block with light oil and install. Make sure to line up the pin with the groove in the pump head. Lubricate the driver and driven shafts, as well as the bushings, with light oil. Then, install the pump head. To ensure that the pump is assembled correctly, make sure that the stamped characters are all on the same side of the pump. These can be found on the head, both separation plates, and the bracket. Install the head cap screws and tighten. Install the pump head mounting foot. Turn the shaft by hand to check for free rotation. Finally, torque all of the cap screws, both head and bracket. The torque procedure involves 3 rounds. First, torque in a crisscross pattern to 125 foot-pounds. Next, torque to 188 foot-pounds. And finally, torque to 250 foot-pounds. Do this for both the head and bracket cap screws. It is now time for the seal installation. Begin by cleaning the seal holder assembly thoroughly. Apply O-ring grease to the seal holder O-ring and place in the groove. Next, install the stationary seat into the seal holder assembly. Make sure to line up the notch with the pin in the face of the seal holder assembly. Remember that the face of the stationary seat has been lapped to a mirror finish. Any damage will affect the sealing ability of the mechanical seal. Coat with P80 lubricant and install. Install the external snap ring. Make sure it is fully seated. Place the spring guide onto the shaft, making sure that it is fully seated against the snap ring, with the cup section of the spring guide facing outward toward the motor end of the shaft. Coat the shaft and the inner diameter of the mechanical seal with P80 lubricant and install. Make sure the seal spring is fully seated with the spring guide. Clean the seal faces with a lint-free cloth and isopropyl alcohol or another suitable cleaner. You may use the seal holder to fully set the seal. Install the seal holder assembly with the seal housing drain in the 6 o'clock position and tighten the cap screws in a star pattern. Next, install the inner bearing spacer. Coat the thrust bearing in light oil and install onto the shaft. Make sure the printed letters on the outer race of the bearing are facing outward. Install the bearing end cap. Tighten the cap screws in a star pattern. Torque the seal holder cap screws and bearing end cap screws to the appropriate torque value. These values can be found in the technical service manual. Install the outer bearing spacer. Install the lock washer with the inner tang in the groove on the shaft. Install the lock nut. Insert a brass bar or piece of hardwood through the port in between the gears to prevent the shaft from rotating. Using the provided lock nut tool, torque the lock nut to the appropriate torque setting. This value can be found in the technical service manual. Finally, bend a tang of the lock washer that aligns with the groove of the lock nut. If no tang aligns, tighten until one does. Finally, turn the shaft manually to ensure the pump rotates smoothly. Your Viking Pump GB-425 series pump is now fully rebuilt and ready to be put back into service. For more information, visit our website at vikingpump.com.